I inherited a dark family secret after my grandmother's funeral and fought to end it, Reddit stories. They say you don't truly know your family until someone dies. I never quite understood that phrase until the morning I stood over my grandmother's casket, nodding absently at relatives I hadn't seen in years, some I'd never seen at all. The church smelled like old wood and lilies, and the pews groaned with bodies weighed down by grief, or the performance of it. For me, it was a strange numbness. Grandma Ida was more myth than woman to me. Her handwritten Christmas cards, her thick black boots in grainy photos, her stern presence in my father's voice whenever he quoted her rules. She'd raised him alone after what he called the split, a mysterious event that was never elaborated on, only referenced with the kind of pause that warns you not to ask. I hadn't seen her in over a decade, not since I was 10 and my father drove us upstate for a tense, rain-soaked visit where she gave me a ceramic bird and told me I had ghost eyes. My mother hated her. My father obeyed her. I feared her, though I couldn't say why. After the funeral, everyone trickled toward the family home like moths toward a flame that smelled of beef stew and inheritance. The house stood at the top of a gravel path, gray shutters yawning, chimneys scarred from years of lightning strikes. It was older than any of us, and it felt it. The air inside was dense with dust and decades, like memories hung in the air instead of floating away. I wandered room to room like a museum patron, scanning framed photos, half-knitted scarves, spoons bent at odd angles. Someone had already begun packing up books. Someone else had left a wine glass on the radiator. It all felt so casual. That was the moment the lawyer walked in. His name was Mr. Norwood, and he wore a tan overcoat too big for his spindly frame. His voice reminded me of sandpaper, dry, gritty, and oddly firm. He clapped his hands for silence in the living room where relatives sat with paper plates balanced on their laps. Then he unfolded a yellowing letter. "There is a condition," he said, looking over his glasses. "Before the will can be read, one final request from Ida must be fulfilled. All named heirs are to remain in this house for 1 week. Together, no exceptions." A buzz of discontent followed. My cousin Trevor snorted. My Aunt Jolene's eyes rolled so far back I thought they might get stuck. My father looked at the floor, and my mother whispered something bitter under her breath. I looked around at this awkward assembly of strained smiles and half-blood bonds and realized I didn't know a single soul in the room, not really. We were all about to be locked into a haunted house with the worst ghosts of all ourselves. The first night felt like a sleepover from hell. People claimed rooms with subtle elbow jabs and passive-aggressive comments about mold and plumbing. My room smelled like lavender and mothballs. There was an old doll in the closet that I didn't dare move. Someone had left it there deliberately. I could feel that. Dinner was a disaster. Someone burned the roast. Trevor got drunk on the wine we'd found in the cellar. Aunt Jolene cried in the bathroom. My father gave a speech no one asked for, about family unity and legacy. No one clapped. That night, I lay in bed and listened to the house breathe. Timbers shifting, pipes moaning, the wind dragging branches like claws across the roof. At 2:14 a.m., a music box started playing somewhere on the first floor. I didn't investigate. By the second day, we'd settled into a tense rhythm. Meals were shared in silence, dishes done in bitter shifts. The lawyer, Mr. Norwood, remained lodged in the guest suite, reading old ledgers and typing letters with a portable typewriter that clicked like bones. Every morning, he'd appear in the kitchen, nod to us all, and return to whatever cryptic paperwork he was handling. Then, on the third day, the letters started arriving. Each of us received one, sealed with wax the color of dried blood. The handwriting on the envelopes was unmistakably hers. Mine was addressed to the grandchild who watched from shadows. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The letter inside wasn't long. "You think you were forgotten, but you were seen. You all were. Each of you left something behind in this house. Something you thought no one noticed. I did. And now you will face it. One by one. Each night. Until the week ends." The others read their letters in silence too. I could see it in their faces. The way Jolene turned pale. The way Trevor crumpled his and shoved it into the fire. The way my father kept his neatly folded and unread, tucked into his shirt pocket like armor. That night, the house revealed its first secret. It began with the attic. Trevor, still half drunk, decided to poke around after dinner, waving a flashlight like a weapon. The rest of us ignored him until we heard the scream. A real one. Not the kind made for attention, but the sharp, animal kind that makes the skin crawl. We rushed upstairs, every footstep a thunderclap. He was crouched in the attic corner, shivering, pointing. There, in the dusty beam of light, hung dozens of Polaroids, photos of us, as children, as teenagers, in this very house. Some of the photos were impossibly recent, images none of us remembered being taken. There was one of me, alone in the kitchen at age 10, staring into the camera with wide, glassy eyes. I had never been alone in that kitchen. We brought the photos downstairs, spread them out like tarot cards on the dining table. Someone tried to make a joke. No one laughed. Mr. Norwood examined them briefly and muttered. The reckoning begins before returning to his room. On the fourth day, the power went out, not just flickered. Gone. No storm, no warning. We lit candles and huddled like war survivors. Conversations turned to accusations. Someone whispered about Ida's gift. How she always knew things before they happened. Jolene confessed she once saw Ida writing names in a black notebook, the cover stitched with feathers. No one believed her. Until we found the notebook, tucked behind the loose panel in the fireplace. Inside were pages of names, confessions. One said, Jolene took the ring in '87, buried it behind the hydrangeas. Another read, Trevor lied about the accident. He didn't save anyone. There was even one about my father. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't have to. By now, we were all unraveling. Secrets were splattered across the walls like blood. No one slept. Meals were abandoned. Even Mr. Norwood looked thinner, as though the house was leaching his marrow. And then came the fifth night. That was when someone tried to leave. Trevor, bag slung over his shoulder, boots crunching the gravel. I watched from the upstairs window as he stepped past the gate. Took 2 more steps. Then froze. He didn't move. Not even when I called out. Not even when Jolene screamed his name. We ran down to him. His eyes were open, fixed, pupils dilated. His mouth hung slack, mid-word. We couldn't move him. Couldn't shake him out of it. It was as if the house had reached through the air and claimed him. So we dragged him back inside and locked every door. The house smelled different the next morning. Not bad, exactly, but unfamiliar, like wet stone and burnt cinnamon. I was the first awake, or at least the first out of bed. The hall lights still hadn't returned, and the only brightness came from the windows, but something about the sunlight felt wrong. Faintly green, almost syrupy, like it passed through something murky before reaching us. I found Trevor curled in the same chair we'd left him in, his eyes still wide, unblinking, like some statue carved out of shock. But his breathing had returned. Shallow, almost imperceptible. But there, Jolene sat across the room in a nightgown and rain boots, muttering to herself and holding one of Grandma Ida's framed photographs like it was a newborn. My father wasn't downstairs, neither was the lawyer. I went looking for him. Not because I wanted to, but because that's what I do when things go wrong. I look for something or someone to anchor me. The guest suite door was ajar. Mr. Norwood's typewriter was still on the desk, but the carriage had been ripped off and left hanging by its ribbon like a mouth that had tried to scream. The window was open. Wind pushed in gently, rattling a cup full of pens. On the bed, perfectly placed, was another wax-sealed envelope. No name. Just a black feather tied to the seal with twine. I didn't open it. Instead, I went to the basement. I don't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the way the house seemed to hum from below. I'd never liked the basement, even as a child. It was one of those long, thin ones with a low ceiling and stone walls, more like a tunnel than a room. The stairs creaked with every step, the kind of creak that carries memory in it. Dust shivered in the beam of my flashlight. I passed shelves of pickled things, rusted tools, and a pile of bricks that looked like it might have been a doorway once. And then I saw it. Scratched into the stone wall with something sharp and purposeful was a list of names. My family's names. Mine, my cousins, my aunts, my father, all scrawled in uneven rows. Some were crossed out. I wasn't yet. There was something else, too, a shape, half buried under the stairs. It looked like a trunk at first, but as I brushed away the debris and pried it open, I realized it was more like a crate. Inside were dolls. Not store-bought, handmade, ragged. Each one had a tag stitched to its chest. The names? The same names on the wall. Each doll had eyes made from black buttons. Except one. One had no eyes. Just empty white circles where the buttons should have been. The tag on that one read my name. I dropped it, staggered back upstairs. The house felt smaller now, angrier. I found Jolene and asked her what she remembered about her childhood here. Really remembered. She laughed, a short, cracked sound that didn't belong in daylight. She used to put salt at the corners of every room, she said. Said it kept things out. Or in, never told us which. That evening we all gathered in the living room again. Trevor still hadn't spoken, but now he blinked sometimes. Jolene had stopped crying and was muttering in a sing-song voice. My father finally reappeared, eyes bloodshot, carrying a thick journal he refused to let go of. I recognized the cover. It was the black-feathered one Jolene had mentioned, the one with the ledger of secrets. Apparently, he'd read his page. I was wrong, he said, voice low. We all were. This house isn't haunted. It's inhabited. That was when the lights came back on, all at once, blazing. Every bulb. The chandelier above the dining room table swung violently, though there was no draft. And then the music box started again, the same one from the first night. Except now, it played louder, slower, almost dragging itself through the notes. We all turned to the hallway. The doll was standing there, upright, impossible. Its stitched arms hung limp, but its head tilted toward us. One white socket pointed directly at me. I don't know who screamed first, but I know who moved no one. We watched, frozen, as the doll stepped forward. It moved like something learning how to walk again. Jerkily, awkwardly, but deliberately. I felt the air in the room shift, like it had chosen. And it had chosen me. That's when I ran. I didn't even think. My body took over. I bolted for the kitchen, slammed the door behind me, braced it with a chair. My breath came in shallow bursts. I could still hear the song, slower now, warped, and something else, too, whispering my name. My full name, over and over. Then silence. I waited 10 minutes, 20. When I finally emerged, everyone was gone. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just the music box on the floor, its key still turning. I picked it up and smashed it. The music didn't stop. That night, I slept in the pantry, small, enclosed behind a locked door. I dreamt of Ida for the first time. Not the real one, the version from the photos. The tall, stern woman with iron gray hair and eyes like ink wells. In the dream, she stood in the living room, holding the ledger. One by one, she read the names, crossed them out. When she reached mine, she paused. "You're the one who watched," she said. "So you will be the one who sees." I woke up to the sound of scratching. Not at the door, from inside the walls. I pressed my ear against the paneling and heard breathing. Labored. Wet, like something was trying to speak through a mouth full of water. The 6th day was quiet, too quiet. I walked through the house alone, no sign of the others. Every room was perfectly preserved. The coffee still steaming in mugs. The newspaper folded to yesterday's date. Even the TV was on, static hissing like a lullaby. I searched every floor. Nothing. No Trevor, no Jolene, no father, no Norwood, just the house. Watching. I went back to the attic. The photos were gone, all but one. Me sitting at the dining table, alone. Except I wasn't alone. In the photo, there was someone behind me. A woman with gray hair. One hand on my shoulder. Her face was blurred or scratched out. I turned it over. There, written in ink, were 2 words. Keep watching. I slept with the lights on that night. Every single one. And then the 7th day came. The final day. I woke up on the floor of the living room, even though I remembered going to sleep in the pantry. All the candles were burnt to stubs. The windows were boarded shut. At some point, the house had decided it was done pretending. I was the only one left. Or maybe the only one that mattered. That's when I heard the music again. But it wasn't the box, it was humming, coming from the basement. I didn't want to go. I begged myself not to. But I moved anyway, one foot after the other. The door creaked open like it was expecting me. The stairs stretched longer than they had before. The shadows thickened as I descended. At the bottom, the light flickered once. And then I saw them, the doll of them, standing in a circle, their heads tilted, their button eyes gleaming like oil. In the center, the crate, empty now. But behind it, a mirror, cracked but intact. I approached. In the reflection, I saw the house, but not as it was, as it used to be, full of children, laughing, until they weren't, until someone began watching, recording, replacing. I looked closer and saw my face, not now, younger. In the mirror, I was still 10 years old, and I was smiling. That's when it clicked. The doll with no eyes. It wasn't unfinished. It was hollow, waiting for someone, for me. And as I stared into the glass, I felt something behind me. Not touch, just presence. Then the lights went out. The dark was different this time. It wasn't empty. It was full, dense, layered, almost textured, like walking blindfolded through someone else's memory. My breath came back to me seconds late, like the air itself had to consider whether I deserved it. I stood still in the basement, in the silence where the dolls had once been, where the mirror no longer reflected anything at all. No light, no sound, just the rhythmic thud of my own heart. I tried to move, but the floor had vanished beneath me. Or maybe I'd stopped existing in any place floors belonged to. My limbs floated without resistance. Time stuttered, as though the house itself had lost its grip on sequence. I blinked once and found myself outside, just like that. The front porch, rain slashing sideways, wind pulling at the shutters. But it wasn't the present. The porch boards were newly painted. The hydrangeas were blooming. I could smell baking bread. Then the door opened, and there she was, Grandma Ida, younger than I'd ever seen her, strong, upright, hands streaked with flour and age. Her face bore none of the bitterness I remembered, only resolve and sorrow. She looked straight at me, though I knew in my bones I wasn't really there. I was watching, just watching. Behind her came a noise, the shuffle of little feet. 4 children appeared at the door, 2 of them holding hands. They looked just like my cousins. A younger version of Jolene ran barefoot across the wooden floor, her laughter sharp and bright. Ida turned back inside and whispered something I couldn't hear. But whatever it was, it silenced the room. The children stared at the door. Then slowly, Ida pushed it shut. I blinked again and the world lurched. I was in the attic now, watching her hammer the first photo to the beam. A picture of my father, no older than 6, his eyes wide with fear. Behind him, a shape, blurred, faceless. Ida's hands trembled as she hung the photo, not with fear but with defiance. She was trying to trap something, or warn someone, or both. The whispers returned, curling through the corners of the attic like smoke. One word repeated over and over. Watcher, 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 not loud. Not urgent, just matter of fact. Like a reminder, I turned toward the sound, and I was back in the basement. The mirror was whole again. But it wasn't just glass anymore. It pulsed, like a heart. And in it, the house stretched on forever, room after room. But each one different. Some were flooded, some burned, some frozen in time. In every version, the dolls waited, sometimes standing, sometimes crawling, always watching. Then the mirror cracked. A single line down the middle. I stepped back, but the ground rippled beneath me like water. And then I saw him. My father, but not the version I knew, younger. His eyes hollow, as though something had already been taken from him. He stood beside Ida, pointing at something in the shadows. She knelt beside a wooden box, whispering. The whispers matched the ones curling around me now. You must become the anchor, or the house will drift. The scene shifted again. I saw Jolene in the garden at night, digging with her bare hands, pulling out something wrapped in cloth. I saw Trevor pushing a boy into the pond, then walking away like nothing happened. I saw Mr. Norwood lighting a candle in the basement and drawing symbols with salt on the concrete. Every secret, every lie, every scar this family had buried. They lived here, and the house it remembered, it fed on it. And then I saw myself, not 10-year-old me, not adult me, something between. Eyes too wide, smile too patient, watching from the kitchen corner as the others screamed. I hadn't remembered that moment before, but now I did. I remembered hiding, watching, doing nothing, because deep down, I'd always known something was wrong, and I'd let it happen. The mirror pulsed again, faster, brighter, until it exploded. I woke on the floor of the basement. No mirror, no dolls, just the dim bulb above, swinging slowly. Dust choked the air. My hands were scraped, my knees bruised, but I was whole, or close enough. When I climbed back upstairs, the house was empty. Truly this time's. No presents. The static on the TV had stopped. The candles were cold wax puddles. The ledger lay open on the dining room table, but the pages were blank now. I crossed the living room, paused at the front door, and found the wax-sealed envelope again, the one with the black feather. This time, I opened it. Inside was a single key, and a note. There is one more door, one more truth. You've watched long enough. Now choose. I turned slowly, scanned the house, every door accounted for, every hallway explored, except one, the small door under the stairs. I don't know how I'd forgotten it, or if I had, it had always been there. But it had never mattered, not until now. I knelt. The key fit perfectly. The lock turned with a soft sigh. Inside was a narrow tunnel, just wide enough to crawl through. The walls were lined with mirrors, none of which reflected me. They showed other people. Other moments. Trevor screaming in a field. Jolene alone in a hospital hallway. My father digging something behind the woodshed, tears streaking his cheeks. Norwood kneeling beside a fire, chanting names that didn't belong to anyone I knew. And then, at the very end, a mirror that showed my room. The one I'd stayed in, except I was still in it. Sleeping. Peacefully. I stared at the reflection, at myself. My chest rose and fell. My mouth curved slightly, like I was dreaming. But I wasn't asleep. I was right here, watching. And then I understood. That version of me, the one in the bed, that was the watcher. The one who had seen everything, all timelines, all sins. The house had chosen me not because I was innocent, but because I was observant, passive, patient. And now I could either join that version, live the loop again, remember nothing, or shatter the cycle. There was a hammer beside the mirror, old, rusted, wrapped in twine. I picked it up. The mirror rippled as I lifted my arm. The watcher in the bed opened its eyes and smiled. Not kindly, not sadly, knowingly, like it had been waiting. I brought the hammer down. Glass screamed, light burst, and then silence. When I woke, I was in the garden. It was dawn. The house stood behind me, still and quiet. No signs of fire, no blood. Just an old house on a hill, windows dark, chimney sleeping. I walked the perimeter. Every door was locked. Every window shuttered. The hydrangeas had withered. The air felt clean for the first time in days. And I was alone. Completely. I never found the others. Not really. The town claimed they'd never arrived. That the funeral was canceled. That Ida had died years ago in a different state. My father's phone number disconnected. Trevor's house empty. Jolene's last known address belonged to someone else entirely. I was the only name left, and the letter I received a week later. No return address, no postmark, contained only one thing, a photograph of me in the house, looking out the attic window, and behind me a doll, button eyes, stitched mouth, smiling. There's a certain kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It replaces it. That was the kind of silence that followed me after I left the house. It wasn't just the absence of sound, but the absence of explanation, of closure, of sanity. You can tell people what happened, but they won't hear it. You can show them photos, but the ink will run, the paper will fade, and you'll be left clutching proof that refuses to prove anything. That's where I live now. In the space between knowing and being believed. Between seeing and being seen. I spent the first week after the house in a motel on the edge of town, One of those places with flickering vacancy signs and vending machines that still took quarters. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that mirror tunnel, crawling, watching myself breathe in slow, controlled loops. I tried burning the photo, the one with the doll behind me, but it wouldn't catch. The edges curled, but the center remained intact, no matter how long I held it in the flame. So I folded it once, tucked it into the Gideon bubble in the nightstand drawer, and left it there like a secret sin. I told myself I'd forget. That's what people do. That's what you're supposed to do. And then the letters started again, not sealed with wax this time. No black feathers or ornate script. These were plain envelopes, smudged by rain, addressed in shaky handwriting I didn't recognize. The first came 3 days after I checked out of the motel and moved into an apartment in the city. It had no return address, no message inside, just a single item, a button, black. Smooth, identical to the ones from the doll's eyes. I laughed at first. Nervous laughter, the kind that hopes it's being paranoid. I threw the envelope away. I didn't sleep that night. The second letter arrived 2 days later. Inside was a Polaroid, not of the house, not of me, but of someone else. A man I didn't know, standing on a pyre at night, looking over his shoulder like he'd just heard something behind him. Scribbled on the back were 2 words. He watched. The third envelope came with no contents, just a dark stain on the flap, something like oil, or ink, or blood. I started checking my locks, started leaving the TV on for background noise, started glancing over my shoulder in elevators, in grocery stores, on sidewalks. Because I realized something: the house wasn't a place. It was a process. It was still happening. The night of the 4th letter, I woke to the sound of something falling in the hallway. Not crashing, just tipping. Like a vase or a picture frame. I lived alone. I moved slowly, quietly, heart pounding in my ears, and found nothing disturbed, except for one new thing on my hallway shelf: a doll. Small, crude, handmade. Its eyes were missing. I didn't sleep after that. I started researching, looking up old property records, trying to find Ida's name or Norwood's, or anything that would confirm the week I spent wasn't some fevered delusion. But the county archives showed nothing. No record of the house being sold or inherited in decades. No obituaries for Ida. No legal records. It was like the whole family had been papered over, erased. But then, deep in a real estate archive site cached from years ago, I found a listing. No photos, no price, just a 1-line description. Family estate, viewings by invitation only. It was signed Ida Norwood, executor. And then a phone number. I don't know why I called. Maybe to feel in control again, maybe to prove it was over. But a voice answered, not Norwood's. A woman, gentle, warm. "You've seen the inside," she said. "But have you seen the others?" The line went dead. That night, I found the mirror again. Not physically, but in my dream. It hung in my bathroom, framed in rust, covered in handprints. When I approached it, my reflection didn't mimic me. It stayed perfectly still as I leaned forward. It watched me, judged me. Then it raised a hand. Slow, deliberate, and pointed behind me. I turned around in the dream. A hallway stretched out, longer than my apartment could ever hold. At the end, a door. It pulsed with light. And a sound. A heartbeat. I woke to find a button on my pillow. Not black this time, white. The next morning, I took a train back to the town. Back to where the house had been. But it wasn't there. The road curved where it shouldn't. The hill was still there, but it was bare. No house. No foundation. No mailbox. Just wild grass and a single tree I didn't recognize. I asked the locals. An old man at the gas station laughed. That place? Oh, it's been gone since before my time. Used to be something there, sure, but burned down in the 40s. Tragic thing. I asked if he remembered the family. He didn't. But his daughter, maybe mid-40s, sharp eyes, twitchy fingers. Overheard and said, "There's a place. A kind of library, not public. Used to be run by the Norwoods. Might find something there if you're looking for ghosts." She drew me a map. It led me to a brick building with no sign. The windows were bricked up. The door had a chain. But when I touched the handle, the chain fell away. Inside was dust and darkness, and shelves, endless shelves, full of ledgers, boxes, photographs, and dolls, each on its own pedestal, each labeled with a name. Some I recognized, some I didn't. Mine was there, still missing its eyes. A note was pinned beneath it. The watcher must never forget. If he does, we begin again. A door creaked open behind me. A figure stepped out. Not Ida, not Norwood, not anyone I'd met, but familiar, like I'd seen them before in a dream or a reflection. They handed me a final envelope. Inside, a list. All the names from the house, crossed out, except mine. And one other, blank, waiting to be written. The figure placed a pen in my hand, spoke one word, choose. And I realized something I hadn't before. The house didn't end. It just moved. It moved with me. I was the anchor now, the one who watched, the one who remembered. And now I had to pick who came next. Because the house was always hungry, and someone had to feed it. You'd think the hardest part would be walking away from that underground room, from the shelves of silent dolls, and the list that ended with my name and one blank space. But it wasn't. The hardest part came later. When I realized I hadn't walked away at all, I'd brought it with me. You don't just leave something like that behind. Not when it looks at you like it knows you. Not when it offers you a choice. The real curse isn't in what the house did. It's in what it asked me to do. Choose. That word followed me everywhere. In reflections, in dreams, in the way strangers looked at me a beat too long. I saw it in the grain of wood, in the curling steam of my coffee. I heard it in the tick of the clock beside my bed. Choose. Not in a voice I recognized, but in one that felt like it had always been inside me. And the worst part, I knew exactly what it meant. Because that ledger, the one Ida kept, the one that ended in Meek, wasn't a list of victims. It was a record of succession. One anchor at a time, one keeper of the house's hunger. And now it was my turn to find the next. To watch, to select, to hand over the burden wrapped in just enough mystery that they wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. I didn't want to. Of course I didn't. But the house had made sure that wasn't the question anymore. It didn't care about what I wanted. It only cared that the pattern continued. It needed someone to see. Someone to carry the memory, the guilt, the weight. Someone to pass the mirror forward when the time was right. So for the next few weeks I waited. I stayed in that dead town, pretending to be a researcher, scribbling nonsense in a notebook, renting a room above a closed-down flower shop. I watched people. All at the diner, in the library, on the bus. I stared into faces and listened to conversations and waited for something to strike me. Some sign that one of them could bear the curse next. I hated myself for it. Every night, I saw the dolls again, not in dreams, not in memory. On my dresser, one more each morning. No eyes, no labels, just waiting. And then I saw her, at the laundromat of all places. Midnight. Most machines were empty, except one thundering through a spin cycle. She sat cross-legged on a plastic chair, reading a worn paperback, headphones in, mouthing the words. Something about her posture, still so composed, made the air around her bend differently. I don't know how else to explain it, I just knew. I started showing up at the same places, quietly, at a distance. She never noticed me. Or if she did, she didn't care. I learned her patterns, the coffee she ordered, the way she read the newspaper's obituaries first, like she was checking something. She spoke rarely, but when she did, people leaned in, like her voice was something they needed to catch. Her name was Violet. I overheard it from the barista one morning. Violet, it fit. She didn't seem sad or broken or lost. Not like the others I'd seen, but she carried something. I could feel it. A weight she never put down. That was what the house wanted. And I hated it. Because choosing her meant handing over everything I still didn't understand. It meant making her the next watcher. So I waited longer. I tried to find someone else. I told myself she was too kind, too smart, too alive. But the dolls on my dresser kept multiplying. One had its mouth stitched shut now. Another wore a dress made from black lace. The longer I hesitated, the more they changed. Then, one morning I woke to find my mirror gone, not shattered, not stolen, just gone. In its place was a new photograph, of Violet, standing at the corner outside the flower shop, looking straight at the camera. I didn't take it, but someone had. That night, the lights in my apartment flickered, and the reflection in my toaster wasn't mine, it was her. Smiling, not kindly, just knowingly, the way the watcher always smiles. I ran, out into the night, through the empty streets, to the laundromat, to the library, to every place I'd seen her. But she was gone. No trace. Not even on social media. It was like she never existed. But the next morning I received a package. No return address. Inside, a single object. A ceramic bird, identical to the one Ida gave me as a child. Its wings were broken, its eyes were buttonholes. I dropped it, and when it shattered, I saw something inside, a slip of paper. 3 words she already chose. It didn't make sense. Not at first. But then the phone rang. No caller ID, I answered. Silence. Then breathing. Then her voice. Soft. "Guy, I saw you watching," Violet said. I remembered. My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" I asked. "You're not the first," she said. "And I'm not the next." She hung up. I stared at the wall for what felt like hours. She knew. She saw. And then it hit me. The final name on the list. It was blank because she had already written it somewhere else. Not mine. Not hers. Someone else entirely. I found the ledger that night. It had returned to my bedside drawer without explanation. The pages were full again. But this time, they weren't names. They were stories, fragments, memories that weren't mine. A diary of watchers, each one handing off the burden to someone new. And on the final page, taped, not written, was a Polaroid of a child, eyes wide, standing in the kitchen of the house, not scared, just curious, and in the corner, half hidden in shadow, Violet older, smiling. And then I realized she wasn't the next watcher. She was the first, the very first, the one who had started it all. And she had never left. Not really. She'd been watching all of us, waiting, choosing, because she didn't just survive the house. She became it. The anchor, the architect, the eye behind the mirror. And now she was free, because I had taken her place. I wasn't supposed to choose Violet. I was supposed to choose for her. But by seeing her, I'd invited her in. And now I understood the final rule. You don't become the watcher by choosing someone. You become the watcher by being chosen back. And she had chosen me. I stopped sleeping entirely after that night. Sleep became irrelevant, a concept for people who didn't live inside reflections. My body still followed the rhythms of hunger, fatigue, aching muscles, but I moved through the days like a puppet waiting for the strings to snap. Violet was gone, but she wasn't. She'd always been there. Not just in the laundromat, not just in the photo, everywhere. I started seeing her in other people. A bus driver's eyes lingered too long in the mirror. A little girl at the park turned to me and whispered my name, though I'd never seen her before. A nurse in the waiting room sat next to me and asked if I was ready to start watching properly. Then stood up and left without another word. And each morning, another doll, some with hair now, some with limbs bent backwards, some with faces scraped clean. They formed a semicircle on my dresser, each turned just slightly inward, like they were discussing me among themselves, waiting for me to admit it. I was the watcher now. I had always been. That was the twist Violet hadn't needed to say. The mirror tunnel didn't show me my future. It showed me my origin, that moment in the kitchen when I was 10. When I stood motionless, listening, not stepping forward, not speaking, just watching. That was the moment the house chose me. It wasn't about guilt or virtue. It wasn't even about blood. It was about proximity to silence. And I had been quiet long enough. Still, there were rules. Even I didn't understand all of them. I knew this much: the cycle had changed with Violet. She'd rewritten something, rewired the house, maybe even split it, because now there were 2 of us, and there could only be one. On the first night of the final week, my mirror turned black. Not like it was covered, like it had sunk into itself. When I touched the surface, it was cold, wet, like lake water. My reflection didn't return. Instead, something else surfaced, a hand. Pale, slender, beckoning me inward. I didn't step in. Not then. But I knew the time was coming. 3 nights later, I found the photo again. The one of the house. Of me at the attic window. The doll still behind me. Only now, I was smiling too. That smile had never been there before. I checked old copies I'd scanned. Different. I wasn't just becoming the watcher. I was replacing the version of me that had watched. A recursion, a reabsorption. And when I blinked, I saw another scene entirely. The house restored. Lights on. Curtains drawn. A dinner table full of guests. All the ones who had vanished before. Trevor, Jolene, my father, Norwood. All seated, all smiling, all with button eyes. Violet sat at the head of the table. Her smile had no warmth, just welcome. Then she stood and pointed at the empty seat across from her. The mirror was the only path left. The final night came with a storm. Rain hammered the windows like fists. Thunder cracked open the silence I had worn like a coat. I stood before the mirror, its surface still rippling like an invitation that was also a trap. I had nothing left to take with me. No allies, no answers. Just the key Violet had never asked for back. The one that had opened the door under the stairs. I pressed my palm to the glass. It accepted me. And I fell through. No descent, just transition. One moment I stood in my bedroom. The next I stood in the dining room of the house. Fully restored. Exactly as it had once been. Except no dust. No decay. Like time itself had been reversed. The chandelier shimmered. The fireplace burned with blue flames. The air smelled of rosewater and ash. And the table was set. Every seat filled. Except mine. Violet gestured to it. "You've come far," she said. Further than I expected. Her voice was soft but endless. "I didn't choose you," I said. She tilted her head. "You watched. That's what matters. We only ever choose ourselves." I sat down. The chair was warm. "What happens now?" She poured wine into my glass. "You complete the circle and decide what kind of watcher you'll be." The others turned to me, their eyes black, shining hollow, yet not empty, full of stories, regret, memory. "I don't want to trap anyone else," I said. "You don't have to," she replied. "But the house must be filled. Every silence needs a sound. Every mirror needs a face." The walls of the house began to shift. Portraits rearranged themselves. I saw my childhood etched onto them. Moments I never knew had been recorded. Me at 5, peering under a bed. Me at 12, watching my father bury something in the garden. Me at 15, standing behind my mother's hospital bed. Always watching. Always silent. "I thought this was about punishment," I whispered. "It's about memory," Violet said. "It's about carrying the weight. So others can forget." She stood. Walked to the mirror above the fireplace. "This is the last reflection," she said. "After this, you choose the shape of the house. You decide who remembers and who walks free." I stood beside her. In the mirror, I saw everyone seated at the table. I saw the rooms behind them, dozens of them, hundreds. A labyrinth of truths and forgotten sins. Then I saw myself. My reflection didn't match my posture. It smiled first, then blinked, then nodded. I reached forward and touched the glass. It was warm, and the reflection stepped aside, inviting me in. But this time I didn't fall. I walked. Through corridors I recognized and didn't. Past rooms that shimmered with fragments of lives never lived. And at the center, a door. My door, I opened it. Inside was a desk, a mirror, and the watcher's seat. I sat. The ledger appeared, its pages blank, except one. At the bottom of the page, a single name. Violet, crossed out, and below it, mine. Not just written, engraved, and beneath that, space for one more. Just one. I held the pen, the final part of the inheritance, and I wrote it no one. The ink blood, the walls of the house shuddered. But the mirror held. For the first time, it did not ripple, it reflected. Only me. And then it cracked, not broken. Released. I walked out of the room. The corridors were empty now, the house sighed and dissolved. I woke up in my bed. Morning light. Birds outside. No dolls, no photos. Just quiet, real quiet. I walked to the mirror. Saw only myself, no eyes behind mine, no smiles waiting to appear. I left the apartment that day. Moved far. changed my name, started over, but I kept one thing, the length now, except for my name, crossed out, because I chose, and in choosing I ended it. The family I inherited after the funeral was never mine. They were the echo, I was the last voice. And now there is silence. For the first time in generations, there is silence. Thanks for watching the video, subscribe, and like the video.